back to the phones, and I think up in Alaska. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
On?
Oh, you're on the air, yes.
Hey, Art, this is Ryan in Anchorage, Alaska.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, I've been trying to call you since 1995.
That's a lot of dialing.
That's a lot of dialing. But I wanted to call in because I live in Alaska, and I've heard about a lot of the critters that your guest has been talking about, and I've actually had an encounter with a shapeshifter up here.
With a shapeshifter?
Wow.
Okay.
Yes.
Proceed.
My dad and I were hunting in one area that we didn't like to frequent much because my dad had a bad experience back in the 70s that he didn't like to talk about. Short version, something hunted him. He never saw what it was, but it hunted him. But we were back in this area by the time I'd been born. I was about 13, 14, and we were back in there a ways, and we'd been hunting all day, so we stopped for a potty break. So my dad went behind one tree, and being a girl, I went for the bush. And I'm sitting there with a 30-30, and I saw my dad walk around in front of me and go up onto the ridge we were hunting on. So I'm like, oh, well, he's done. So I finished up and climbed up out of the bush and was up behind him. So we're hiking back in, and I'm following him. And my dad was one of those people who always had to look behind him to see who was behind him if he knew. Well, I'm following him, or I think I'm following him, and he's not turning back and looking at me. And like about quarter mile, half mile of hiking behind him, I'm like, something just set off my spider senses, and I'm like, this isn't my dad.
Really?
Yeah. I had hunted with the man since I was 8, so 6 years, 7 years out in the woods with him. I knew my dad pretty well.
Sure.
And so I just stopped, and I'm like, hey, turn around. And he didn't stop and turn around. Like, even if he'd been screwing with me, he would turn around. Whatever this was didn't stop. It kept walking. And it walked around a spruce tree in front of me and disappeared. And I'm standing there, and I cocked the gun because I'm like, I'm walking behind this person. I can hear their footsteps. I can see the light hitting their body, and they just step around a tree and disappear. So I'm standing there, and I've told this to my husband. I'm not a person that believes things unless I see them. I mean, I've been in the woods most of my life. I'm sitting there looking dead on at where this person disappeared, and something comes running at me. I can hear it, but I can't see it. But it's like Predator. I could see the light being displaced by it. So it's running at me, and I opened fire, and that's how my dad found where I was at because he heard the gunshot. So I opened fire, but I don't know if I hit it. I had been trained never to shoot at something unless you saw what you're shooting at. That's
sure.
Gun safety 101. Nothing dropped, and it didn't seem like I hit anything, but my dad comes running up onto the ridge. And he's like, we get into an argument because he thinks I'm just, shooting bleep. And I'm like, I'm not just shooting things. I was following you. So we finally hash it out. I'm like, no, you walked in front of me up onto the ridge. I followed you because you were done using the bathroom. I've been hiking behind you for 20 minutes now. And someone or something walked around that tree in front of us and disappeared. And then something ran at me that I couldn't see. Well, my dad's decision was, let's get the heck out of here. So we noped out of here. But that's when he told me that a few years back in the 70s when he was in the Air Force, he'd been hunting in that area and it was getting close to dark. And he always walked around armed. He carried a .45 hand cannon and he had a rifle. And he always carried the hand cannon in his hand because that'll stop a bear. He'd been hunting in this area and he kept hearing something behind him. So he thought it was a bear, circled back, never caught this bear. And he's almost to his pickup truck and whatever it was about 30 feet behind him, and this is a clear trail back then, so it hadn't grown up. He's looking around, he can't see it. So he pulled the .44, and right when it's about 10 feet from behind him, he turns around, there is nothing there. But the entire trip back to his truck, he said it felt like something was just standing on his neck. And he couldn't see it. And I haven't gone back to that. I even told my husband, I've been hunting since I was 8. I'm not scared of bears. I'm not scared of lynx. I ain't scared of coyotes.
Sure.
You cannot pay me to go hunt back in this area.
Ken?
Wow, yeah, well, very indicative of the stories of the Kushtaka. The Kushtaka is from southeast Alaska. The Tlingit people talk about its ability or, its desire to lure you out into the wilderness. And one of the ways that it does this is by assimilating or taking the form of someone that you know. So when you said that this thing looked like your father, but you could tell that it wasn't instinctively, and that it was attempting to lead you into the wilderness, that sounds pretty much like the stories that I heard about the Kushtaka. That's what they do. Pretty creepy stuff.
Pretty creepy indeed. And if it had been a Twilight Zone, it would have clearly been a monster. She would have opened fire, only she would have hit it. And then, of course, when it's on the ground, it would have morphed back into her father, and it would have been horrible. So, yeah, that's like a shape-shifting story, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to tell you, young lady. That's one heck of a story.
Well, it's real, and thanks for taking my call, Art. I've been listening to you for almost 20 years now, and I'm glad you're back.
Okay, thank you very much, and take care.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Well, hello, Art.
Hello.
Scott from Graham, Washington.
Hello, Scott.
And this is something that happened over on the west side of the Olympic Mountains.
Yes, sir.
And it's up the Queets River. Anyway, there was 4 of us, and we had 2 pickup trucks and 1 camper on 1 truck. And we went up to this beautiful spot where the river, and on the other side of the river is a cliff with these just huge boulders, probably 5 to 1,000-pound boulders. Just huge.
Big rocks.
Big rocks. And so we got up there, and it was dusk, and when it's dark up there, I mean, it is dark. I mean, you can't even see your hand in front of your face.
Understood.
And so we decided to sit all in 1 camper and have a good old poker game.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all sitting around playing poker, and it was about 1:30 a.m. And we heard some splashes in the river, and we heard some grunts.
Grunts.
Yeah, just kind of huge grunts. So we figured it was probably a bear out there having fun in the river,
Don't like grunts.
Yeah, and so after a while, the grunts seemed to get louder. And we heard like big rocks hitting each other. You know how you can hear the crack of rocks?
Of course.
And after a while, these rocks seemed to get closer and closer to our camper. And you could feel the rocks hit the ground outside to kind of a big thud. And I'm telling you, we all looked at each other and we said, nobody's going outside. I mean, we were armed to the teeth, but we were scared to death.
I wouldn't. You mean like those gigantic rocks, coming out of the air and hitting the ground like that?
Yes. It's just like somebody was over there throwing these huge rocks.
Uh-huh.
And then, I wanted to call you last week about the Sasquatch sounds because you wouldn't believe this. I mean, the hair on the back of our necks was standing up. It's standing up now.
Was it like the sound I've got?
It was close, but not really. I mean,
we're closer to the first one that Linda Howe sent or the second one?
The second one.
And you mean
sounds...
that absolutely horrible, it was I don't know what I would call that. I would call that, it almost sounds human. To me, it sounded like a man in horrible, horrible agony. That's the only way I can think to put it. Is that about the way it sounded?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it, Art. It was just about like that, and it was echoing up and down the river, and it was terrible. We were terrified, and these rocks you could almost hear them whistling through the air, and they were crashing on the other side of our camper. They were hitting in the water, and the cracking of the rocks, and this went on, Art, for 3 hours. And we were
What do you guys
scared.
do? You just sit there and sort of shake at the table, or what?
We're on the floor of the camper. We just couldn't move. We didn't know if one of these rocks are going to hit us.
Now, you see, that sounds realistic to me. That's where I'd be, floor of the camper. You betcha.
And we were armed to the teeth, let me tell you. And I was ready for anything. And this went on for 3 hours, and it was about like 4:30 in the morning, and the sun started coming up. And we're all looking at each other going, thank God.
Yeah.
Especially because I had to go to the bathroom. But anyway... And so we finally had enough nerve to go outside the door because the crashing and everything had stopped like about an hour before the sun came up.
See, I would have waited, too, for the crashing to stop and for the sun to come up. Okay, sounds good so far.
Okay, so we decided we'd go outside. And finally we opened up the door, and we all got out, and I said, you guys get out here, you got to see this. And the other truck was just fine. But around our truck and the camper were these huge boulders in a circle around the camper.
Oh, my God. What, I presume to this day you have no idea what it was.
No, but it had to be something
awfully big.
Awfully big. Because it took us pushing with one truck and pulling with another to get him far enough out of the way so we could get the truck and the camper out.
That's an incredible story. Do you swear that's true?
Oh, yes. And this happened in 1975 because it's when I got out of the service, and all four of us got together because we used to go on camping trips when we were in high school. And to this day, when we get together, I mean, this, you know, this is something we always talk about.
You still talk about. I can imagine you would. Well, you know, that one is almost a topper. What an absolutely incredible story. And so that's where it ended. You hauled the rocks away, and that was it.
Yeah, we pushed them out of the way, and we got out of there, and I have never been up there again.
I can't blame you. Thank you.
I will not go.
Thank you very much for the story. Thank you, sir.
Art.
Take care. Something.
Oh, boy. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello. Hello there?
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Oh, it's me.
Only you'd know that for certain, but it sounds like you.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
I have a ghost story.
All right. Where are you?
I'm in Texas, Austin.
Texas. Austin, all right.
Right now, but the resident ghost was living with me on Long Island. And my son was about 3 or so, and we had a pull-down attic door, and he wanted the Jeep I had hidden for him for Christmas.
Yeah.
Up there. And I said, how do you know what's up there? He said, well, Irving takes me up there. Irving. I said, who's Irving? He says, he visits me at night. And I said, well, how do you get up in the attic? Does he pull the door down? And he said, no, we float up through the ceiling.
Through the ceiling?
Through the ceiling. And in days to come, Irving had taken him to where Irving lives, which was a box of bones in the ground.
A box of bones in the ground?
In the ground.
Through the ceiling to get to a box of bones in the ground?
Yes.
Okay.
So, in days to come, we had an occasion to walk through the community cemetery to see the Memorial Day parade.
Lots of bones in
and
the ground.
as we're walking through the cemetery, he pulls at me. He says, Mommy, there's where Irving lives. And I go over to where he showed me,
yes.
And it was Irving Riggs.
Oh, my God.
So,
you mean it said it right there?
It said it right there on the gravestone. So I worked for 30 years at a hospital.
Excuse me, but you know, this really sucks. I mean, I don't like graves. I want to be cremated. I don't like bones. I don't like things buried under the ground. And the last thing in the world I'd want is to be in a box with bones and Irving.
Well, that was Irving's bones. But I asked him, I said, weren't you afraid? He says, no, Irving talks to me.
Yeah.
That he was afraid at first. But now, there was a question earlier this evening. You said to somebody, does this child see the person?
Yes, oh yes.
Well, I have that answer for you.
And it is?
Well, I worked for years with a girl by the name whose maiden name was Riggs. So I told her, I said, Edna, do you have any ancestors by the name of Irving? She says, yes, a great-grandfather. So I told her the story. And in quite a few years to come then, she said her aunt had died, and she went over to help her take the stuff clear the attic out, and a picture fell out of a box she was carrying down from the attic, and she asked her other aunt, who is this?
Yes.
And her other aunt said, that's your great-grandfather Irving. And so she gave me the picture.
Yes.
And now my son's in his teens, and he hasn't seen Irving, and Irving has just, turned water on, and we always say, oh, it's Irving. Things have fallen off the wall, there's footsteps, and so when I came home from work and I put the picture on the bulletin board by the phone, my son comes running in from work or something, and he grabs the phone to call his girlfriend, and he stops short. He hangs the phone up. He says, Mommy, where did you get that picture? Who's that picture of? I said, I don't know. I said, who does it look like? He said, remember that guy who used to come visit me at night?
Man. Oh, God. So there's not much question about the fact that, at least in your son's case, he sure saw Irving.
And Irving was a real person, a real ghost.
Oh, man. Oh, man, what a story.
We put a face to Irving. I wanted to tell you the story.
Better face than bones.
I think he was better looking in the picture.
No doubt. All right, my dear, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, no, thank you.
033. Again, East, you're on the air. Hi.
Yes, sir. This is Tony from Pueblo. Listen to you on KCSJ.
Pueblo, Colorado. Fine. Yes, welcome to the program.
Story I have, it actually happened the summer of 1986, right before I went into the service.
Yes, sir.
And I'm originally from North Carolina, and
I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah, just a little bit of an accent.
Yeah.
The part of the country I'm from is known very well for its ghost stories and UFO sightings and things of that nature.
Uh-huh.
On this particular night, me and a couple of my high school buddies decided we were going to go to this place that was reputed to be a haunted house. We went up there and went inside and was messing around, just goofing off, doing typical high school guy things.
You need not describe them, I recall.
So we went ahead, got pretty bored with that, didn't see anything interesting, so we decided to leave. Well, the house was located out in the country, I guess about 6 or 7 miles from the town I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And we started back into town, and there's a long stretch of road called Piper's Gap Road in that area.
Okay.
We started down the road, and it just got real foggy. Just like it just sat down, and it's real humid back there, so I figured it was just one of them typical things, it got a little bit cooler, clouds came down.
And it just lays down, yeah.
And it just laid down on the road.
Sure.
Well, while we're going down through there, got to going and talking about people that pick up hitchhikers, and the next thing you know, they'll turn over, be talking to them, turn around, and they won't be there in the car.
Many stories like that.
So we're going down the road, and we come up to, I wouldn't say a fork in the road, I'd say an intersection where another road connected with the road we were on.
Yes.
As we approach it, we can just make out a person standing right on the side of the road, right at where the road connects.
A hitchhiker.
And he's got his thumb out.
Naturally.
Well, we're talking to each other, and I said, why don't we just stop and pick the guy up? And they're like, no, man, don't do it, because we've just been talking about picking up hitchhikers.
That's right.
So I said, no, we're going to go ahead and do it. And I was driving. So I pull the car over. The guy sitting beside me in the passenger seat rolls down the window, leans out and asks the guy if he needs a ride. Well, he just automatically turned back to me, and, his face was just ashen. It just went pale. And I leaned down and looked out the passenger window, and he had already asked him if he had wanted a ride. I looked at the guy. The guy was as white as a sheet, and he was still looking down the road in the direction that we had came from.
Huh.
And he didn't move, didn't make any any sign that he even knew we were there. And the next thing I done was hit the gas and got out of there as fast as I could. And that was, 9 years ago, and it's still, to this day, I think about it, and it kind of gives me the shivers.
And what is it that you think you saw? What was he?
I don't know, because I'd never seen him before, and I come from a pretty small town, and, it was, I guess it was a ghost. That's the only thing I can attribute it to, was it was a ghost. It was an apparition.
An apparition. I appreciate the call, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. There you are. An apparition. Wildcard line, you're on the air.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
This is Ann from the Springfield, Missouri Ozarks.
Hi, Ann.
And I have a story for you a ghost story that completely changed my life.
I bet most ghosts, really, people who have encounters with ghosts have their lives changed, period.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
All right, I'm a Cherokee historic reenactor. We're called buckskinners. We have pre-1840 camps. I own an 18-foot teepee, wear buckskin dresses, cook over the campfire, and sleep on a buffalo robe.
Okay.
In 1994, I attended an 11-day rendezvous. That's what we call our camping events.
Yes.
It was held at Fort Washita, Oklahoma. It was an old Confederate Civil War fort and cemetery. There were about 300 camps, hundreds of people dressed in proper period attire. Sunday was the last day of the rendezvous. Saturday afternoon, we celebrated a lovely wedding of a couple, complete with medicine man and ritual ceremonies.
Right.
That night, a group of the wedding party got really partied hardy, drinking and loud drumming into the wee hours of the morning. Sunday morning, people started tearing down their camps. My husband and I decided we'd stay through Sunday night and break camp Monday morning. Everyone else was gone. The guy next to us stayed in his trapper's tent. He decided to stay along with only 2 other lodges. The rest of the 300 camps were gone by Sunday afternoon. Okay, it's now 11 o'clock Sunday night. After finishing a wonderful dinner and sitting around the campfire, my husband decided he'd go up on the hill and get our truck and bring it back to the primitive camp. Mm-hmm. While he was gone, all of a sudden I started feeling really scared, and I'm not the kind of woman that gets scared easily.
Right.
The hair on my neck was literally standing on end, and I didn't know why. He came back with the truck. I still had on my white buckskin dress and was holding a candle lantern, and I walked to the truck to meet him. He was very nervous himself, saying he felt really strange. From a distance, he said, I look like a ghost. Suddenly, these birds started flying above our heads, screaming a high-pitched, shrill sound. These were ravens and owls. This was at midnight sharp, okay?
Yes.
And this was totally weird. Ravens and owls don't go flying around at midnight doing this.
No.
By now, a spirit of sadness and remorse had overcome me, and I was crying and sobbing. We decided, we started hearing drums all over the area, and these were ghost drums, Art. There wasn't anybody there. Some were nearby and others were far away, and they were Indian drums beating fast like war drums.
Right.
We got into the teepee. I kept the fire going really strong. We smudged the lodge and said prayers. Yeah. We could hear waves. We could feel and hear waves of ghosts coming by the teepee all night long, Art.
Well, there's a night of terror for you, and the fast drums, too, the war drums.
Everywhere.
That's got to give you the feeling that here it comes, baby.
Yeah, we could hear jingles on the women's dresses like they used to wear.
Right.
Sometimes the drums were right on the other side of our number 10 canvas wall.
And so you lived through the night.
Yes, about 5 o'clock, I suddenly got really tired at 5 o'clock in the morning. I fell asleep with a roaring fire and the candle lantern lit. 30 minutes later, I woke up, Art, to a cold, dark teepee, and the canvas door was gone. I shook my husband and said, my God, wake up. He got up and looked outside the lodge, and the teepee door was twisted and leaning up against the wall of the teepee. Now, that doesn't make any sense. There was no wind, and I had a heavy dowel on the bottom of that teepee door. There was no way that thing lifted up, twisted, and was leaning against there. But the really spooky part, Art, was that the fire was out.
The fire was out, yeah.
And completely cold.
No, I've got you. Bad night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's a wild one. A whole Indian nation arose around them that night. Lucky to live through that. Oh, man.